Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor podcast. Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Devon Taylor podcast, where we have guests from all around the world tell their unique and powerful stories to not only allow their voice to be heard, but for you to leave feeling inspired. Today's guest is someone who is transforming how we think about aging and healing. As a best-selling author, filmmaker, and founder of the Functional Medical Institute, Dr. Mark Sherwood has helped millions discover the true power of functional medicine, optimizing health, longevity, and purpose from the inside out, from reversing biological age to breaking the cycle of over-medication. He's providing that healing is not just possible, it's personal. So I'm happy to welcome to the show Dr. Mark Sherwood. Hello.
Hey, Devon, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to get to know you more, but I'd really just like to start off with just your journey. You've become the face of the Functional Medical Institute. What first opened your eyes to the idea that there's more to medicine than just prescriptions and symptom management?
Well, it started with me in my previous career in law enforcement, believe it or not. So my last several years in law enforcement in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was put in charge of developing a wellness program for our large department, and they didn't have one. And so I started studying and looking around, and there was one statistic that I saw that is still true today, and it was true 50 years prior to me searching. Now I'm dating this back to early 2000s, and it was this one. What is the average life expectancy for the 20-year retired male police officer in the United States of America? That answer was the same in 1950, the same in early 2000s, the same today, because I just checked this recently because my wife and I wanted to see if it was still true. The answer is about 66 years of age. And when I saw that first time, my heart sank because, and again, nobody's perfect, but these men and women serve our communities every single day. And they, they've gotten these retirements and they have these dreams and goals like all of us do. You want to one day retire and live the good life, and kind of rest from the service that you provided. And that was the catalyst for me. When I saw that, yeah, I wanted to provide answers and get behind the whys of that during my time on the police department. But I realized there was a catalyst of things that would happen. It was high stress, poor lifestyle, lack of sleep, living in ways that I thought at the time was just isolated to law enforcement. But then I quickly realized in my studies it wasn't isolated law enforcement at all, but it was quickly becoming the norm with the faces and cultures of all aspects of America. And so that started my studying process, and I realized, that I needed to know more. And I guess probably in my heart of hearts, I always wanted to make a difference in people's lives, serving people. And the service and protection mode is probably something that was part of my life. And going into naturopathy and the study of naturopathy, and then shortly thereafter joining my wife, um, it just seemed like a natural transition, protecting the serving from a larger standpoint and trying to get people's lives to be better.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of shocking. 66? That's wow.
A lot of
And
people know that, and I was like shocked that they even checked it. It was probably a week ago, no kidding. And I checked it again, and I was like blown away that we haven't. And it's like, what does it take for us to learn our lessons? Now,
yeah.
did we ever learn the lessons? You and I both know the dangers of the standard American Western diet and lifestyle. It's terrible, but yet we still do it. And I'm like, what are we doing? When are we going to open our eyes and truly see?
Yeah. And I kind of want to get into what you guys are doing at the Functional Medical Institute, but I'm just like, yeah, in awe by that. That's crazy. And like you said, a lot of us will still make, crazy decisions. I just had another doctor on who was speaking about type 2 diabetes symptoms, and, how you can still, have all the answers and people will still choose to, make the bad choices that will lead them down a different path. But I kind of want to ask, like, so then you find that out, and then this leads to the Functional Medical Institute. So what are you guys doing there to kind of help with, what you saw?
Well, we kind of take a different approach from the standpoint of I don't want people living 80%. And if you really think about the 80% mentality, it's like, well, I do pretty good. And then it sort of transitions to, well, I do better than so and so. I do better than Devon, or Devon does better. And it's like this comparison thing. And then our bar of excellence has been lowered. And I was an athlete back in the day, former professional baseball player, and I've been on a lot of stages, and I didn't have one coach ever tell me to give 80%. If they were, they wouldn't be my coach very long because the parents and players would have been outraged. How dare you do that? And so what we do is we teach people 100%. I want their expectations to be high. We deal with people and get right in the middle of life and getting to know them. And we offer them the chance that we want to work with them. It's a partnership or community. We get to know them personally, their wives or husbands or children or dogs or what they like to do. And then we talk about nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement, the four things we really have some control over. Again, we're going to give them guidance. And then we talk about also genetics, hormones, peptides, and supplementation. But we wrap all of those 8 areas around the idea of emotions and even the spiritual side of where a person is, because you can't separate the mind, body, spirit. So we really, and we're not any better than anybody else, but that's what we offer as far as the idea of community, the idea of collectiveness, and sort of a trustworthy relationship with our 25,000 odd clients we have right now. And you say, well, how do you keep up with that? I don't know, but we do. And I suppose when you're in the middle of what you're called to do, you have the strength and abilities and passions to do it.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. God finds a way for you when it's your passion. Um, yeah, and that's a lot of different things to manage. Like even one of the ones you said, peptides or something like that. What is that? What is that you're managing with that?
So peptides, a very popular buzzword right now in the functional medicine increasing, and also it has been out there in the longevity space for a long time. Peptides are short chains of amino acids, anywhere from 2 or 3 up to 50. Above that's a polypeptide, and above 100 is considered like a protein. But you could back that up and say, well, all proteins then are probably made from peptides. Well, that would be true, right? But peptides are naturally produced in the body. But when we get older or get beat down or broken down or immunocompromised or highly chronically inflamed, we don't produce them as well as we should. Again, if we don't eat right, we don't produce them as well as they should. But we can actually take those things through intranasal, oral, subcutaneous delivery methods, and you can bring back a little more designed action to rebuild your immune system, your muscles. You can lose some fat, you help the brain, help the mitochondria. There's a lot of stuff you can do with peptides.
That's beautiful. And as you just taught me something new, I didn't even realize that was something that you could manage. But, as you guys have come out and you guys are seeing, bridging all of these different things to kind of help your patients. What has been the biggest challenges you guys have faced when it comes to bringing this message to the medical world that, often resist a lot of change? Um,
I think probably we used to think that we could change the medical world by changing the medical mindset of the medical leaders. But we realized over time the big influence of pharma, and I'm not knocking the people in the system, but I'm knocking the system. Pharma's influence on the system is immense. They fund medical schools, fund the curriculum, design the curriculum, and the curriculum becomes something no more than here's how you recognize disease conditions, which we need that, and here's the medications you use. We need those. We're not saying it's bad, but we're saying that if you don't have the discussion around what caused the disease process or disease condition and why you're having the symptoms, you have no discussion whatsoever about remediating the things that cause the symptoms, therefore reducing disease or reversing disease. And how about avoiding disease? That conversation is not had. So we pretty much realized probably 12 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe that wasn't going to happen. So we thought if that's not going to happen, We need to create our own system, create our own language, to create our own alternate system. Not alternative, but an alternate system where people can actually have some information. And our system is really not based on anybody else's. We just kind of OJT'd it, you know. We just learned the job. We didn't have anybody to ask or anything like that. So we were kind of like, I mean, people refer to us sometimes as the original biohackers or maybe the real longevity doctors, I suppose. And that's probably right because we were talking this way 20 years ago, my wife and I, and nobody knew what we were talking about. And of course, when they did hear us talk, they thought it was, you know, kind of voodoo or witchcraft or not even real. But there is a shift right now that's good and it's productive and it's very promising in people's lives. And so we're starting to see more people thinking differently. And I think that's been one of the most encouraging things I've seen.
Hmm. You know, and I love that you said that, because it's something that I'm commonly coming across when I'm interviewing people within the medical field. You know, there's a obviously there's a big influence when it comes to big pharma and just, you know, schools in general and the curriculums that they're running, but just finding the true path to really what's going on with us inside is not something that is being talked about too much unless, you know, you're sitting on a podcast like this one or, you know, screaming from a rooftop somewhere, but are, you know, putting out the word like you guys are doing, you know, just kind of mobilizing together. But you touched on something that I kind of wanted to ask about, like what part, because to me all of it just sounds like you're finding ways to help people, but you said, you know, part of it could be like voodoo-ish or, you know, people believing that. What part of it would be voodoo-y? I guess that's where I'm confused.
Well, I think probably the idea when you look at medical studies, for example, so let's break this down in little parts. If people say, I want to trust medical studies, where's the studies on what you do? Well, you're not going to find a study out there, and I think people will get the vibe of this that takes X number of people and does a double blind random placebo controlled study, which is the gold standard. And you're studying heavily processed foods like burgers and fries against maybe a salad and salmon or something. You're not going to get that because who's going to fund that? And then if you funded that and got that, what would that do to the fast food industry? Well, it would crush it. And so it would turn on its head everything we're talking about because within big pharma, no one considers the study that says how can the standard American diet is it not creating disease processes? They don't test that. And then further, they don't test is the non-standard American diet or the more natural Paleolithic, perhaps, when you use a word, does that bring about less disease? I think that's the medical side of things that makes it look a little weird because you're not finding studies there. The same is true with the emotional aspect. What does unforgiveness do to you? What does shame do to you? What does anger do to you? What does lack of sleep do to you? What does lack of community do to you? You know, and it goes on and on. How about a relationship? I mean, these things are important. You know, the human experience, Devon, is not just physical, man. It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's intellectual, it's financial, you know, and what do financial problems do with people? I mean, you can go on and on with stuff, and it's not, there's no standard way to look at it. All I know is that all those things matter. And all I know is I want to help people create more benefit in all those areas and do what I know to be true and do what makes the common sense principle. And I think common sense and wisdom should override pretty much everything, you know? When we do that, people do get better. And is it one thing? No, but it's all things.
I think that's great too. I mean, that's a lot of different components to um, kind of, you know, be in charge of, but to help all of those and to consider all of those, uh, I think definitely will make a big difference in someone's life. But in your experience, what's been the most misunderstood aspect of healing?
I think it's this. I think it's formed right up here with these two things called your ears. What am I talking about? when people come to see us, whether it be online, and we're multi-state licensed, of course, we're in person. I'm in my office right now. They immediately understand the principles that we listen. And that's completely different from the conventional system, which has a 6-minute appointment where listening's not really allowed. Not because maybe the doctor doesn't want to, but because they're being pushed to a level that's absurd by the bosses above them to see X number of people a day. So when I'm spending an hour and a half with somebody, listening to them, hearing them, rephrasing, reframing what they told me, that's the biggest compliment we get. You guys heard us. You listened to me. I felt valued. Thank you for caring. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me hope. Again, that doesn't take talent. It just takes compassion. It probably takes a little knowledge of anatomy, knowing you got 2 ears and one mouth, meaning you should probably listen twice as much, probably. But it's really an interesting phenomenon. But that's probably what we hear the most.
Wow. So would you say that, obviously there's different ways that um, a traditional doctor would address an issue versus how you guys are addressing it? Would you say that it has a lot to do with you listening to the patients and what's going on truly versus just what doctors are kind of prescribing?
Yes, because like when someone comes into a typical doctor's office, I mean, why are you here? Well, I got a headache, stomach ache, a foot ache. It's always the first question is, what is wrong? What's
Hmm.
wrong? Now, people will get a kick out of this, but if you're in a relationship, don't do this, but you can see the absurdity of this. I want you to spend one day a week with your partner, spouse, or whatever, and saying, we're going to commit to one day a week of spending the whole day focusing on what's wrong. And that's going to destroy that relationship. It change the focus from one day to all days. That's the first problem. Come in and what's wrong. And then at that point in time, it goes into this algorithmic way of thinking. Well, what medicines can I put on board to mitigate these symptoms? I'm not talking about how to fix it. I'm talking about how to get the headache stop or the stomach ache stop or the foot ache stop. That's all I'm talking about. And the quicker I can get that done, the quicker I can get a medication in their hands or get them to a pharmacy, the quicker they're going to leave and on to the next one. Whereas we would look at it and hear all those things, not neglecting any of that. It's all important. But I'd want to know, why do you have a headache? What are you eating? Let's talk about stress. Are you dehydrated? How much sleep you got? And the beat goes on. But I think you get the idea. It is incumbent upon us as people to have the opportunity to have a chance to make a decision based upon looking at all sides of the coin, not just one.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're, like you said earlier, we're very complex as human beings, so to think uh, we could be diagnosed in a few seconds and not necessarily address anything. It's kind of crazy if you think about it.
And that brings me to a very good point that I think people need to know. When you get a diagnosis code stamped on you or put in your medical chart, like type 2 diabetes, for example, let's
Hmm.
say Devon's type 2 diabetic, and you come in and get that stuff in your chart and you make all kinds of changes. And in 15 years, you haven't used any diabetic medication. Your blood sugar is perfect. You have no excess fat in your frame. You're doing awesome. Guess who's still diabetic? You are. There's no way to get it out of there. That diagnosis code becomes like a bad headache or even a bad tattoo that you can't get rid of. And it affects your premiums. It affects your premiums in both health insurance and perhaps life insurance as well. So that's a big deal. So we try to stay out of that stuff and give people the autonomy to realize that their health is their decision. And what they do is their decision. And what they decide to do with their clinician is their decision. And I think it empowers them over the course of time.
No, it sounds empowering. And I kind of wanted to talk to. I mean, you had mentioned the word biohacking,
Mm.
um, and that gets used a lot. So I kind of wanted you to. What does that mean to you in the context of longevity?
It means everything that you know, combining biology, anatomy, physiology, maybe medical systems of the body, maybe pathophysiology, common sense, exercise, nutrition, anything you could know about anything about the human body, and then taking that information and synthesizing it to a place where you can put into action a plan to maximize the entire functionality of not just the human body, but the human experience. Big
You
no.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm like almost like I want him to break it down more, but but I'm like I'm trying to decipher in the same moment because your work is very complex, but at the same time, you make it sound so simple. So,
Well, but we need to have like intelligence is good. Wisdom is better. Communication falls between the two. You can know all kinds of things, and I can be all smart and throw out all kind of biochemical terms and talk about methylation, oxidative stress pathway, and um, mammalian target of rapamycin and the autophagy path. I could talk about all that all day long, but if the person I'm talking to does not understand that, my communication is poor. And I didn't use wisdom to communicate something, but if I can communicate in a way that's simple, using stories or analogies that they understand, they get it and it becomes reality. And they understand the whys, and they're going to stay with the whys because they understand the reasoning behind it.
what's it called? I know I sent you a list of questions, and one of them I'm looking at right now. Um, you help with people reversing biological aging. But first, I wanted to ask, what does that mean? Um,
So there's a chronological age. As I sit here and do this podcast with Devon, my chronological age says I'm 61 years of age. That's what it says. And I can't change that. And as the minutes go on, that thing continues to go northward. Can't change. That's called chronological age, based upon a clock, based upon a calendar, based upon time, this metric of time. But does that mean that every single person with my same date of birth, the same chronological age, is aging at the same process and speed? Well, that answer is obviously no. And the point to make and really to hammer that point home is that people that are listening right now might remember going to a 20-year class reunion. And with your spouse, you're sitting there and you have this epiphany moment. You're like, wow, man, they look old. Or you look at someone else, wow, they don't seem to have aged a bit. So the aging process is not only, and certainly in a minimal sense, chronological, it's biological. It's based upon what you've done, what you've been through, what your body's been through, how it's responded, how you've cared for yourself. And it really does matter. So we've been able to see that process, the biological aging, actually be a centerpiece and focus of our, I don't want to call it practice of our business because we're not practicing, we're doing it, right? But we have tests now that can test your immune system's biological age and effectiveness. We have tests now that can test your brain and your lungs and your heart, etc., on the biological aging uh, pace that they're on. And it's not unusual to see someone. I don't want to. I'll give up my own numbers right now, but my immune system age is in the 20s, which is good. My biological organ systems are in the low 50s, which is also good. And I'm working diligently to figure out, along with my wife, different ways that we can further slow down that pace to make our biological aging pace more in line with what is expected. Expected in our mind is the organ systems probably have the capability, from everything that I've read, studied, and looked at in history, they probably have the capability to live about 120 years, calendar years in time. But what is our expectation? It's probably about 80. So we have about two-thirds, back to that concept of setting our goals inappropriately low and then lowering the bar as we go and making it more acceptable to the average. So I think we can slow the pace down to where it's probably pacing biologically to about the 120-year pace.
and I'm curious too because I have done a machine at the gym, and I don't know if these are similar, but it told me what my actual age was. which was older than what I am.
Mm,
At the time, I wasn't working out a lot, so I would say that probably had a lot to do with it.
little bit, yeah.
But also, what's funny about that is that I've been told, what I connected with a friend recently, and she knew me when I was in high school, and she was talking to her parents after we talked, and I guess had shown them recent pictures, and they had said, "Oh, he looks like he hasn't aged in a day." So the contracting, the differences between those machines. Would you say all of the things that you had just mentioned would be a little bit more in depth than what someone may get at a gym? Because I had that experience, and I don't think it was very true to who where I'm at in my life, but
No, I
um
think the devices out there are probably okay, but obviously we're gonna do things what's showing in your blood, what's showing in your cells. We have a ton of diagnostic tools to do that. We believe it or not, we look at genetics as well. Now, genes don't change, but they give you great insights that determine the aging process. But information can give you insights to benefit the aging process. So I think there's more specificity in what we can do by a long shot. But of course, I don't knock the machines. If it motivates people, I'm cool. And then you also can't neglect the obvious. I mean, you obviously appear to the person you were speaking of and the family that looked at that and said you haven't aged a bit. Your appearance looked younger than your age, your chronological age, and I think that matters too. And that probably makes somebody feel good, and it may make you feel good. And so, like when people get good scores here, I watch their emotional side light up because they realize that all the hard work may be paying off.
mm, yeah. And what would you say that like now that we know what it is, what are some of the most effective tools that have helped people reverse their biological age?
Well, it's going to be in the area of, I always say food first. So nutrition's first. There's no question about that. I think right behind that is probably sleep. I don't think we sleep enough and rest enough because when you rest, you are fasted and you're in they're really the only place where you can regenerate, rebuild, recover, renew, etc. Um, and then you got exercise and stress management would be right there, kind of, you know, 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, whatever I mean. They're important. And again, those things don't require money per se. They require effort. And then right behind that, then you can start stacking on certain supplementations, peptides in the form of larger peptides and even smaller little oral ones called bioregulating peptides that go into the DNA and bind to straight DNA material. And then hormones are obviously in that pathway as well. So it's really all of that, but you start with the first thing, which is fixing the food that comes into your system.
And what would you, I mean, like obviously fruits, veggies. I mean, I'm pretty good about making a nice smoothie, but I know I could probably eat a lot more veggies. What would you recommend to anyone that is maybe doesn't have the best diet? I mean, I've heard not getting a lot of things out of boxes, I guess, is like a good rule of thumb. So,
Yeah, anything that you can't imagine being in its original package form. Like there's no boxes growing on trees. I mean, it's pretty clear. But, that's kind of a very general overall way to look at it. Find foods in their natural sources, natural production, natural packaging. And again, this may be another way to look at it. Anything the government subsidizes, don't eat, because they subsidize grains and breads and corn and soy and sugars, among other things. So, some of this subsidized, food from the government is not any good for us. It creates disease processes, and the system is broken. But I think people, when you're out there, you're like, well, what do I do? First of all, don't diet because dieting thinks about what you're not supposed to do, and you focus on that. But I start out with telling people just replace one meal a day that's good. One, just start with one. Maybe it's the first one. Maybe you make a smoothie in the morning like that. That's outstanding. And celebrate that. And you celebrate that, it leads to smaller steps to victory. Victory doesn't get achieved in one day. Life's a big old journey, it's a war, and you have to win the battles every day. And if you don't, that doesn't mean you've lost the war. That just means you got to keep on fighting. And so I think it's one meal a day, one decision away at a time. And I think that's the way to do it to get some change going.
Nice. And I like that you mentioned peptides and hormones. Would you suggest red light therapy?
Love red light therapy. I use it, do it. I think it's great to reverse aging processes on skin. It does help with detox pathways, reducing free radicals at a a very epidermal level. I also use near infrared, DM, and far infrared through a sauna because that penetrates even deeper. But the same principles, it's just deeper penetration, all the way down even with the far infrared into the mitochondria. Love red light therapy. I think people should do it. I cannot see a negative in it anywhere.
To definitely get back on it because I was doing it for a little bit, and I'm so like quick when it comes to wanting to see a change, and if I don't see a
Yeah,
change instantaneously, then I'm like, it's not doing anything for me. But I've heard it has really great benefits, so
it
I need
does,
to.
but I would recommend it. I think even cold plunging is good. I think that's got some benefits too. And if people don't have a cold plunge, you can certainly cut the hot water off in your shower 2 or 3 days a week. Stand there and jump around for 2 minutes, and just tough it out. That can help you. These things like that, they're very, very good to help you with.
Okay. It's funny too, and I've heard different things about cold plunges, but I'm gonna take your advice on it and try to throw
Try
one
the
in there.
shower first. There you go.
Yeah. And so, next question: many people have accepted medication as a lifelong sentence. How do you help patients safely transition off of unnecessary prescriptions?
No one is born with a medication deficiency. Just let that kind of sit there a minute. We look at medications, and medications, we're not saying they're bad because they are necessary and they do save lives. But medications turn off or turn on processes unnaturally. Medications always have nutrient pullouts. In other words, when you start and turn on something or turn off something mechanically or pharmaceutically, it could cause a depletion of certain B vitamins or minerals or things of that nature. So all that can be determined. Get people to believe that, and then to go back to say, why are we on the medication? Why am I on blood pressure medication? Well, because I had high blood pressure. Well, what caused the high blood pressure? Well, if you go back and create the improvement of the vessels to where they can dilate better on their own, then blood pressure medication would theoretically push the blood pressure too low to dangerous levels, forcing the person to get off or tone down the amount of blood pressure medication, which is a win. So you're talking about returning physiological function to different systems of the body that drove their dysfunction, drove the need of the symptoms to prescribe things. So if you look at it like that and try to get people coached up and sort of taught up on how to do it, they typically get better and you're able to get off a good amount of those medications that you may have need for a while, but you never knew how to get off of them.
It's so funny too that right before the doctor I was speaking to was specifically working with getting people or reversing type 2
Yeah,
diabetes in people. Like
100%.
I said, once you're diagnosed, I mean, it's pretty much something that sticks with you on your medical record for the rest of your life, but not something that you have to stick with for life.
Yes.
I kind of want to dive into, the work you do with your partner. I know you guys started this together. What's it like working together in such a high impact field?
My wife, she's my best buddy. I mean, honestly, she's my pal, and there's nobody I'd rather be with her than with her. We share life together, we share a job together, we share a vision together, and we really enjoy each other. I mean, I like her as she's somebody as a good friend, but I'm also in love with her as my wife. So for us, it's unique. I can't imagine being with somebody else, man. And we both came through a lot of stuff historically in our past. We both done overcome fights, so we have so much in common. When we met, it truly was love at first sight. I mean, I probably knew, and I was like, "Oh my god, am I really gonna go there?" She's probably like, "Oh my gosh, is this guy for real?" I can imagine that. But there's a story out there in a movie that was made about that. It's called The Prayer List. Pretty fascinating story, but um, it's great. I can't imagine their way, and it actually helps people because there's not many people that I talk to that don't want to be in some kind of relationships that's mutually edifying. And when they see a couple, that's happy and working together, it kind of does give them hope.
Yeah. I think what makes me so excited to see you guys and to even when you guys reached out was that there's like a synergy that you guys are doing this together, but at the same time, there's so much love for each other. So, could if for anyone that's trying to figure it out, with a partner or, trying to build a business with somebody, would there be any advice that you could give them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you want to make sure, first of all, have open dialogue about it. Make sure you have shared passion. Work through situations that may go wrong. Talk through those situations before they can go wrong. Talk through the why it's not going to work, as well as why it's going to work. Understand that all the way through. And it doesn't take a lot to realize, man, this is awesome. And then realize that no matter what happens between us as a couple, I mean, we've had disagreements before. Who doesn't? But we're still in the same line of work trying to help somebody. And that keeps us on the same page, on the same road, in the same vehicle, going the same way. And I think we need to get right back to the foundations. If people are out there looking at this for the possibility of doing it, go through that checklist like I just talked about. And then once you get into it, if you're already there and you're like, I'm not sure I did the right thing, go back to your checklist, go back to your whys, and go have that conversation again. And then the other thing that I will say that relates to both of those scenarios is every Friday night, and we do this, we have a date night. I don't care who calls. I don't care who intrudes. Nobody. The answer is no, thank you. I'm busy. And it's important. It's important to get away. Do we talk business sometimes? Do we talk life all the time? But like we're out of the office. We just spend time with each other. And I think too, we do this intentionally. We vacation because you're working together all the time, man. We'll get away like in the winter and summer. We'll do like a 10-day vacation. We just have made that a point. And then the quarters, we might go to um, a couple different 4-day weekends here and there on the quarters because that's important. So you have to schedule time away with the person that you're in business with. Because if you don't, it becomes all work. Well, the old saying goes, all work and no play makes, well, not just Johnny, but also Jill, perhaps a bad boy or a bad girl.
Yeah, that's true. I love that. And I think that's something that's often overlooked in relationships is,
Yes.
spending that time or at least making it a priority to spend that time. And
And
um,
I think my wife appreciates that because I made that thing and I stuck with it. And of course, that affirms to her, I would be confident saying this, that I am committed to that. So I'm more committed to her and that time with her than I am the job, although I'm committed to both. But that makes the priorities um, appear in
yeah,
reality based upon actions to be right.
no, and you can tell that there's a deep love that you have for her, and I'm sure she feels it. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And I know it's going to inspire the next person to love a little harder on
I
their
hope
partner.
we need to love people more, Devon, because I mean, we made this commitment and we do this job. It's like every encounter you have, every conversation you have, right here, I'm with Devon Taylor. I mean, my goodness, you have become the most important person in my life right now. And my job is simple to make it better than I left it.
Yeah,
And in all the audience that's listening right now that I cannot see and cannot meet, it's the same. You just don't want to miss those moments. And I think it matters with a great amount of significance.
definitely does. I think it definitely makes me see even more like why I'm doing this. Each and every episode, each and every guest, each and every story. Yeah, they just it gives me purpose. So I feel grateful. But I kind of wanted to go into the films and media, kind of how you guys have done that as well, and you've inspired millions of people, around. What's your hope for how people think differently about health after hearing you speak?
My hope is that they believe that it's attainable. that they don't have to be distracted all the time by death, disease, sickness, and lack. Because when that becomes the focus of your conversations, it will eat you alive. You're not living through life, you're dying through life. And I don't want to see people have an increased sick span, Devon. I want them to have an increased health span. If that means longevity, so be it. But it's about living healthy, doing what you want to do when you want to do it for a longer period of time. And whether we do, one-on-one work, group work, speaking, writing books, movies, it doesn't matter. The mission is the same.
For someone who's listening that might be feeling overwhelmed with their current health, where's the first step to take back, or what's the first step that you think that they should take to take back control?
Well, I think they need to look in the mirror first of all, number one, and learn to love themselves again. And give themselves a break. Because a lot of times people, I mean, look, we're all human beings. We're one moment away from doing something really stupid or doing something really good, or saying something bonehead or saying something really bless someone. And so we got to start right there saying something nice to ourselves and say, I'm going to love you enough to take back my health, and I'm going to love you enough to make the right decisions. That's number one. Once you resolve that in your mind and heart, and they got those two things together, then you're going to figure out who's going to help you, who's going to walk with you. And whether you get a friend or a clinician or something like that, who's going to help you? And helping you is not pointing out what you do wrong and calling that thing accountability. That's not accountability. Someone helping you is going to define and practice accountability such as this. I'll just model it with you. Devon, we talked, man. I know that you told me you had the ability to do this, right? Yeah, yeah, I got it. Um, Now I'm going to remind you what you told me. That means it's in the account. It's in your account of who you are. So in other words, all I'm going to do is remind you of accountability because ability is in your account. You've already decided that. And that's the point. It's a belief system. It goes back to that thing called hope.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I honestly feel that, yeah, a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people struggle with the self-love part first and foremost. I feel like we're in an epidemic of depression and just feeling really low with ourselves. And I've become victim of it too at times, and have found it hard to feel good, when nothing else around you does. So I resonate with that, and I just wanted to make sure I said that because that was, as you were talking, that was just like heavy on my mind. But with people that I know you said that taking control back and kind of loving yourself, what would you say? Like, what's the easiest way to get to that point of loving yourself? Like, how? I mean, you seem like you're pretty self-loving. How do you love yourself?
Well, it hadn't always been that way.
Mm,
Everybody has a story. I think I've learned that people have been through a lot. If those lessons are earned and learned, they can turn around and teach those lessons to other people without having to have other people go through them. Could them first. I used to look at my life as less than, or don't deserve this, or don't deserve that. Who am I? Grew up in a small town, can't get out, can't do this, can't do that. I listened to those voices enough. And I'll tell you, and Devon, this, that those voices they'll still try to echo every once in a while, and you got to shut them down and realize that I'm not so bad. And, not to be over spiritual, but God sent his son Jesus to die for me. And that right there is an overwhelming thing to think about. If I was the only human being on earth, that means I'm worth something. And
mm,
so I think people out there need to get back to that point. And whether they believe that, what I just said or not about God and Jesus, that's not the point. The point is to understand how valuable and unique they are, because as I've checked DNA and I realize we're unique in that, but we're different in that. No one has the same fingerprint. No one has the same retinal scan. We're special, man. And everybody is unique, which means there's a unique purpose and passion and opportunity for people in life. So I myself every day. that I'm okay and somebody else can, that's a win.
That's beautiful. And yes, I resonate with what you said. There's a song that I've been listening to a lot lately. It goes, "He saw the best in me
Mm,
when everyone else around me could only see the worst in me." And I was singing it the other day, and my friend was like, "Can you?" Because yeah, you got to find, your connection with whatever it is that you believe in. You got to find your connection to the ultimate source, and for me, it's God. And knowing that and having that has helped me too through some pretty rough times.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're all going to go through,
Yeah.
and as we go through rough stuff, we can let it become something that causes us to have permanent setbacks, but it doesn't have to be permanent setbacks. It can be a perpetual comeback. I think there's a way to shift that to where, you help people. And I've been through times in my life, man, where it wasn't anybody around. And I'm like, what are you going to do, man? You going to just quit? Really? And you got to decide to get up and quit sitting there crying about it. And that's hard. Sometimes you got to fight the tears and rub off the blood on the knees where you fell down and keep going forward and don't stop.
I love that. Yeah, we have to keep going, guys. I have a few more questions before I let you go. I know I've been keeping you a while.
Good
I
thing.
have been enjoying this conversation. It's really opened my eyes to not just how we can tell others how to view ourselves, but how we can view ourselves and how we can help ourselves. Uh,
100%.
I've been asking a lot of the doctors that have been on, kind of what excites you about where the field of medicine is going, medicine and wellness are heading in the next decade, and what do you think we'll see, or what do you think that we could really be kind of walking into?
With the volume and speed of information and knowledge that's coming out there, inclusive of AI, you're going to see some amazing stuff happen. I think we're moving so quickly. I mean, we're using now, stem cells, and even they're trying to understand the principles of sonoluminescence, which is kind of a really unique thing that would resonate with you, like the sound. If it's the right sound, it can go through water and it creates such a combustible explosion. It creates temporary light, which creates power, which creates hydrogen, which creates matter. Now, who does that sound like? When you talk about a sound, speaking, that created light and water and matter. I mean, we go back to the principles we find in Genesis, but we're talking about the ability to modify DNA. We're talking about the ability to create things that could create more youthfulness on a cellular and genetic level. We're seeing things right now at a pace and speed that we've never seen before, and it's exciting. I mean, you're talking about longevity. We think really smart, but we're on just the very tip of that sphere
Hmm.
with what could happen in the future.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy to see where medicine has gone, but I think it's so powerful because a lot of people are being able to take their power back and actually know what's going on with their bodies, like you said, and diagnose not necessarily themselves, but finding better answers than just popping a pill or getting an injection. But a few more questions. If you could leave one message for the next generation about taking care of their bodies, what would it be?
Think that it would be wisdom to start early and think about your latter years before they became latter years. So when you get to be 20, imagine when you're 40. And the decision you make when you're 20 will affect who you are biologically, aging wise, health wise when you're 40. Take charge of your health right now. The quicker, faster, stronger you can become in the knowledge base and desire to be passionate about health early on in life will affect you later on in life and will save you massive amounts of struggles and finances and heartaches, because what I said earlier was true. It will save you from the distractions of death, disease, sickness, and lack. And I think The next generation needs to understand that, because those distractions will take away everything you have as far as your purpose of life.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Before I let you go, though, I would like for you to just let us know, where can we follow you? Where can we support? Where can we, if we want to work with you, where do we go? That way I can leave it all in the show notes, for anyone to, find you and work with you.
Yeah, certainly it's easy. Sherwood.tv. That's where we can be found. Nice free ebook there that people can download to kind of get a high level summary of stuff I've talked about today and probably more. Um, Everything we got, the books are there, movies there. People don't know about us. Have free webinar that airs. We air it a month on the second Tuesday of the month, and people can attend that. It's free, and I see what we do, questions, and schedule appointment with us. Yeah,
Perfect. Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Sherwood. I truly appreciate you being here. I truly appreciate you sharing your story and kind of just giving us more insight. But yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed this interview.
yeah, I did too, man. You did a good job, Devon, and appreciate you having me, man.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. Until next time. See you later.
Hey guys, it's Icarus here,
And Amelia.
and I'm here to tell you if you'd like to join our brand new adventure. Go to DevonTaylorAuthor.com to learn more.
And check out the cool items like the new bucket hat.
Yeah, and so much more. See you guys there.
So far.